Welcome out, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for taking the time to listen. We are going to be finishing up Ezekiel today, I believe. I think that this should be the last episode on Ezekiel. And then I've got some other stuff planned, and we're going to get into that. It's going to be a lot of fun. So let's go ahead and start. We're in chapter 34, and we're going to start with the verse 6. They have wandered through all the mountains and all the hills across the face of the earth, yet no one has gone to search for them. So he's talking about Israel. He's talking about his people. And the image of God being the shepherd that goes and finds the sheep that have wandered astray, that's a pretty archetypal one. That's one that's used a lot, especially in the New Testament, but also just like throughout the Bible in general. It's so true, because we kind of bumble around, and we get off track, and we start to follow things that don't make any sense. And I like the example that Saint Maximus uses, or the analogy. He says that the sheep they graze, and we kind of graze on the contemplative understanding of the word, of the gospel, of the Bible, and we pick up like the surface level stuff. We get like the wave tops, like we get the entry level things, but we don't dive deep into it. We just kind of graze on it. And because of that, we're not rooted in anything really solid, and we kind of wander astray. And so since we're not really understanding what does the word actually mean, right? Like, what is the deeper significance of it? And how does it connect to our hearts? How does it pull us into a right devotion to God? How does it pull us into a change and a shift in the way that we live our lives, the way that we interact with other people, the way that we think about ourselves, the way that we present ourselves to the world, the way that we are? How do we get to that point? Because if we don't, there's nothing to anchor us to, the rock. There's nothing to keep us on the right track, to keep us on solid ground, and we kind of graze. And so like one thing moves into another, and people get confused with all these different ideologies and the stuff like, well, the Bible says this, and then this other spiritual text says this, and they're kind of saying the same things a little bit. So are they not the same? And it's like, no, because you're looking just at the surface level. You're looking at the external. You're looking at the stuff, right? And that's one way to interpret it. There's also just the fact that people get lost because we're dumb, and we go astray. We wander. We get caught up in our own desires, our own passions, our own wants and needs. And we take our eyes off of the shepherd. We stop looking at God, and we start just looking at like what's right in front of our face, right? Because that's all sheep look at. They look at the grass that's right in front of them, and they graze. And then there's another spot over here, and there's another spot over here, and they just go like little patch of grass at a time. And that's what we do. There's this catastrophe. There's this thing that happened to us. I got to pay this bill. This girl said something to me, and now I don't know what to make of it. This guy is interfering with my work life. My coworkers are doing this, that, and the other. The economy's doing this, that, and the other, and all this other crazy stuff. And we just look at these immediate things that are right in front of our faces, and we don't look to what's higher. We don't look to the shepherd that's leading us. The shepherd is standing back and looking at everything, saying, no, we need to go that way. There's more grass over there. There's water over there, right? There's danger this other direction. We need to move in this way. He's keeping track of time. He's keeping track of location. He's keeping track of the big picture stuff, because he's not fixated on what's right in front of his face. He's focused on everything. And by extension, God has the best perspective on life, and he's not confronted with he's not sucked into the little details, right? But we get sucked into those details. So this one thing that we're confronted with today, this problem, feels like a big deal. In the grand scheme of things, it's really not. Now, how we react to it could be, because it could define our character. It could be an opportunity for us to really grow. And if we treat it badly, then we miss out on a lot of potential opportunity. We miss out on a lot of growth. We waste what we could have been, right? Like we don't sacrifice for the higher ideal. And so, yes, it could end up being something very significant. But most of the time, the stuff that we're stressed about, things that we have anxiety about, not that big a deal, right? Who of you can, by worrying, can add a single hour to his life? And I like when they're in the boat and Jesus rebukes the storm. It's like, why are you guys worried? Where's your faith? Is your faith in the storm? Is your faith in me? Do you not trust God who is over the storm? Do you not understand that who I am and that I'm literally in the boat with you? Like, you're fine, right? But that's how we are, because we fixate on the external things. We fixate on the waves, on the storms. We fixate on the pleasures too. Like, this feels good. I like this. There's a clump of grass. There's another clump of grass. We just go from one thing to another without really thinking about it. And so it's important to do our best to not fall into that. But it's also important to understand that part of the amazing quality of God and the fact that he loves us, which is crazy if you really get into it. Like, why? I mean, like, he's the Lord of the universe, the ruler of the, of light and darkness, creator of all, everlasting to everlasting, eternal, great, mighty, not formed by any natural occurrence, but rather the originator of everything that we have any comprehension of, and so much more, because he is infinite, loves us, cares about us personally. That's a big deal. And that's something that we don't appreciate enough. But because we get so fixated on this stuff, like part of that is that God understands that that's how we are, and he goes and looks for us. He brings us back. And sometimes it doesn't seem like God is bringing us back. Sometimes it seems like we were in pain, right? Like, this sucks. My life is not going the way I want it to. This is unpleasant. And the reality is that maybe that's discipline. Maybe that's a rebuke. Maybe that's to show you, hey, this is not the way you need to go. And sometimes that can be confusing, because sometimes those things are challenges, and that's actually exactly where we're supposed to be at. So it starts with keeping your eyes on God and being responsive to his guidance, right? Because we're not ever going to be totally on track. We're just not. Like, we can hear the word and understand this is the direction I need to move. This is the call that's on my life. And you start moving, and you immediately go in the wrong direction to some extent, right? And so it's not about getting it perfect. It's about just being willing to listen when you feel the little shepherd's crook on your neck and like, hey, go back this way. That's the yoke. Like, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. It's not, I'm adding weight to your life because it benefits God. This is me leading you. This is me taking the reins and controlling you and moving you in the direction that you need to go. This is for your benefit. And this is the best thing that can happen for you. And, as heaven is higher than earth, so are my ways and my thoughts higher than yours. So there's a certain element of faith, there's a certain element of trust that comes into that, where we have to just learn to be responsive and to move anyway, even if we can't see the big picture, even if we can't understand why we're doing what we're doing. Like, but there's grass over here. I want to eat this, or there's something better over here. Just trust me, right? And God goes and looks for us. That's the really cool thing. That was why I underlined that in the first place. He goes on to say, I myself will tend my sheep and give them a place to lie down in peace, says the sovereign Lord. I will search for my lost ones who strayed away, and I will bring them safely home again. So I think that you could probably hear that and understand the grace, the forgiveness, the mercy, the comfort in knowing that even when we get off track, he's going to bring us back, right? In context, though, we've heard Ezekiel up to this point. It's very harsh. It's very vivid imagery of, you're going to be destroyed. You are on the wrong track, right? And it was up until this point, it's been a lot of now is the discipline, now is the severity, now is the painful element of this, now is you've pushed me to the point where I have to take dramatic action. And now we look at it in this different context and understand that discipline is an act of love. And it's not anger and human anger, right? I want to lash out. It's anger in the sense that movement is initiated, that God is called to action because he's moved to action rather, because he understands that this is what's necessary. This is what's best for us. We've hit a point of no return. But even in that, there is still redemption. Even after your life falls apart, he's still there. He still wants you. He still wants to call you back. And that's something that's hard to accept, actually, because we shame ourselves. We make ourselves feel bad. It's hard to imagine forgiving somebody that has severely mistreated us, right? And so when we think, well, how can God forgive us? And it's not necessarily that we consciously think that he can't. It's that we don't forgive ourselves. And so we turn in shame. We cover ourselves. branches with the fig leaves, and we try to hide, and because we're self-conscious and we don't feel good enough for it. And the thing is, we're not. But God doesn't ask us to be. God asks us to accept what he has to offer. And that's it. That's the whole message. It really is like you need to be willing to be responsive to that guidance and to understand that you're a dumb sheep. We all are, and it's okay. He understands that. Whatever calling God has put on your life, he understands that you're kind of an idiot. And there's something comforting in that, because you can go forward and start to make choices and decisions and to advance and to do things and get started without having to be perfect, because whatever he wants you to do, he understands where you're at. He's going to fill the gaps, and he's going to magnify what you can do beyond, or he's going to magnify what you do beyond what you could on your own. Jumping ahead a little bit. I don't know if I can talk about this one a lot, but I liked it. It says, it's Ezekiel 36:9. See, I care about you, and I will pay attention to you. A lot of times, I underline that because it really spoke to me. It's easy to start feeling like because God's not directly speaking to us, that maybe he doesn't care. He's not paying attention to us. He's forgotten about us. But that's just not true. He is paying attention to us. He is looking at us. He does see us. He doesn't ever turn his face away from us. He doesn't ever, hide us in shame and like look the other way, like, I can't deal with this person. He doesn't do what we would do, basically. And so there's something very comforting in that, but it's also it's a call to change, right? Because if God is willing to do that, then we don't need to be perfect. Obviously, we can't be, but if you really understand the level of forgiveness that has been offered to you, it is a very precious gift, and it's something that should be treated with respect. It's something that should be treated with honor and appreciated, and not just taken for granted as, oh, well, I'm saved, that's all I need, right? Like, well, God's just going to forgive me. I'm going to mess up, but it's fine. It's not a big deal. It's like, no. Like, have a certain amount of reverence for the fact that even though you really don't deserve it, you get this if you'll accept it. And it's not by anything that you do, it's by grace. It's a very powerful thing to consider. Now we're back into the harshness of Ezekiel and all of the prophets, really. They polluted the land with murder and the worship of idols. So I poured out my fury on them. I scattered them to many lands to punish them for the evil way they had lived. But when they were scattered among the nations, they brought shame on my holy name. For the nations said, these are the people of the Lord, but he couldn't keep them safe in his own lands. Then I was concerned for my holy name, on which my people brought shame among the nations. So again, this is back to, yes, Israel is a chosen people, and God wants them to have a certain treatment, but at the same time, he wants that for everybody too. He's using them as the example, but he clearly communicates with other cultures, with other cities, with other civilizations. Like Melchizedek is a great example of that. There's plenty of characters in the Bible that were from surrounding nations. They were not of Israel, but they feared the Lord. They respected God, and it appears that they followed him. And I don't know exactly a whole lot about that other than what shows in the Bible. I'm sure that that's probably an interesting thing to research and get into. But if nothing else, just understand that we talked about this earlier in this series. There is a certain amount of, like, if God allows dishonor to come to his name, then that is a barrier of entry for other people coming to him, right? That's something that prevents other people from wanting to walk in faith with him. Because if everyone who follows God is shameful and their life sucks and like God like doesn't seem to protect them or care about them, and they're just like bad people and they're being punished all the time, and like that's not appealing to anybody, right? And it's not like, I don't think that God ever tries to say, well, how do I make this appealing to people? But there is a certain limit of like, if you just see people being like tortured and beaten and enslaved and like captured and overrun all the time, and that's all you see of them, and like they're bad people, that doesn't look good. That's like not like I don't really want to get involved in that, right? And so that has relevance in today's world. Like we have a certain obligation, I think, to live the best we can according to the teachings of Christ, but also to understand that we are ambassadors. We're carrying the flag. We're we're the we're what people see, right? Like this, we're the hands and feet of Christ. We're working in the world. And so the way that we present ourselves to people matters. It really matters a lot. And that's something that we all struggle with in different ways. I tend to be prideful and kind of angry. And I want to confront people. I want to be argumentative. I want to be mean. I want to make fun of people, right? Like I like to do. Like I don't know what to tell you, but I got to pull back from that and understand that, like, look, if I'm just like mocking people and making fun of their bad decisions, that doesn't show the spirit of Christ. And so that's my issue. That's not the same issue for everybody. Some people are selfish. Some people are greedy. Some people are very lustful. Some people, all of us be. Yeah, but no, like there is something very powerful in understanding that God wants his name to be presented a certain way. And there's punishment when you don't do that. There's forgiveness, but there's also there are consequences. And at the same time, he's not going to allow people who pursue him to just be swept up in all that perpetually. He's going to save us from that. And he did. He saved Israel from that time and time again. The people that survived were typically the ones that were more righteous from what we could tell and ended up turning back. Right. And that's the whole cycle of it. The history aspect of the Bible is like you follow God, things go well, you become prosperous, and then you become prideful. Luciferianism comes into it. Those satanic influences start to take over and you become a degenerate and you start to worship other gods and idols. You lose respect for God because when you're struggling, when things are hard, right, you start to realize that you don't have it all worked out. When you're drowning in the ocean, you pray. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're an atheist, you pray. If you're in the middle of the ocean, the cartel picked you up, took you out there, and it was like, bye, dropped you in. Fish food now. What was that? Scarface? I don't think so. Probably not. Something like that, though. Maybe I'll write my own movie, and it'll be even better. New classic, updated. I have no idea. We'll work on it. Don't steal my ideas, folks. Anyway, if you're drowning in the middle of the ocean, there's no one around, you're going to pray. Did you understand that you need help and you can't do it on your own? But when things start to go right, there's a natural human tendency to feel prideful. It's like, I've got this under control. I did this. Look at me. I'm the best. And I am the best. But I still have to remember that even though I'm the best human, I still need, I'm just kidding. But no, like in all seriousness, like we do have that natural prideful tendency to fall in love with ourselves, essentially, the vanity. And that's what happens. So you go through that, and then God is very, very patient in dealing with people that have gone through that. And I think that part of it is back to Sodom and Gomorrah. Will you spare the city if there's 10 righteous people? Yes, I will spare the city if there's 10 righteous people. Like 10, really? Only 10 out of all of the stuff that's happening here? And he won't do it for one. He'll just get that person out. But if there's hope, God still gives those people a chance, right? Not even for their own sake, but for the sake of there is still hope. There's a seed of righteousness in this place. Let's give it a chance. I'll help it, right? But again, he gives us free will. He's not going to force anybody to do anything. He may influence things, but he's not going to force anything. So we have to make the decision. So that's the cycle that we're seeing throughout Scripture. It's a cycle that we see in our life too. When people turn to their own ways, fall in love with their own stuff, that's the mark of the beast, by the way. What is 666? It's a sign of humanity. It's a symbol, or it's the number of humanity, excuse me. How so? Well, that's probably a whole separate episode. I probably shouldn't get too far into it. But basically, I mean, it's the number of man. It's the systems that man creates. It's the fundamental proclivity towards human-based errors. It's probably the best way to say it. You have, when you create human systems and human structures, there is a predictable trend that takes place. So, for example, you look at why doesn't socialism work? Why doesn't communism work? Well, because people are corruptible. People are greedy. People are selfish. People experience pressure and they start to behave differently. The environment influences us in certain ways. And so those are predictable, and you can see them in history. You can predict them in any setting, really, once you understand them. And they're very evident if you pay attention. And so one of those things is that proclivity towards self-worship, right? Like, what do we see immediately in Genesis? Well, after the fall, Cain kills Abel, builds a city, barriers, separation, and then right after that is the Tower of Babel. or oh, let's make a name for ourselves. Let's build a structure up to God. And if you read Revelation, we'll make an episode on this. But if you read Revelation and look at that as, the sign of the beast is I don't really believe it. May be on a spiritual level embodied as some sort of monster and some sort of beast, but in a physical way, it's more of a structure. It's more of a system that arises out of people worshiping themselves, people thinking that I don't think that evolution or it is the best example, and AI may be a better example. I'm not saying that that's what it is, but AI is a good example of that. Like, we create something that is lifeless, right? It has no life. That's in the beast, or that's in the Revelation. There's no life there, but we worship it, or at least it looks like we might, because it seems as though it has all the answers for us. And they're talking about using AI to rewrite the Bible. Like, that kind of sounds like that pattern, if nothing else, right? Because prophecies, they follow a pattern. They're not typically one-offs. It's like, this is the structure of reality. You're stuck on the wrong side of history. And if you keep moving in that direction, there's going to be prices, or there's going to be consequences. It's a price to pay. And we see that over and over again, and we haven't learned. Those who do not learn history are doomed to repeat it. I thought that we were going to finish Ezekiel tonight. Maybe not. Let's keep going, though. I will give you a new heart, and I will put a new spirit in you. I will take out your stony, stubborn heart and give you a tender, responsive heart. And I will put my spirit in you so that you will follow my decrees and be careful to obey my regulations. It's really important. I just had this conversation with somebody. It's not a logical argument. It's not about, oh yeah, this makes sense, you convinced me. It's about your heart. It really is. It's not like your physical heart, but like the center of your being, who you are, how you express yourself in this world, the way that your spirit interacts with your body and through your soul. And we use the heart as like a symbol. Obviously, we don't physically mean the organ literally, but it's a good metaphor, and it's an enduring metaphor for sure. It's about having a radical change from the inside out. It's not about learning any certain doctrine or philosophy. I get stuck in this a lot because it's like, I see these people like apologists, like arguing with non-believers. I see people arguing, within the church over things like, gay rights, for example, like, should we allow, LGBT, whatever, in the church, versus, well, should we allow them to lead church? Like, where is this? There are these like current issues that are taking place amongst Christians. How much should we talk about politics? How much, what is the correct interpretation of the Bible? Is it literal? Is it symbolic? Is it, whatever? What does this specific verse mean? Right? Was Jesus all about love and forgiveness, or was he actually pretty strict? And I won't get into that today, but there's all these different things, and I don't know about you guys. I feel like I have to know it all. I feel like, well, if I don't understand all of this, then I'm not walking in faith appropriately. I'm not carrying the name appropriately. But that's not really it. It's about the heart. It's about the transformation. My most powerful experiences with Christ were never because of the result of like an intellectual argument, or I realized, oh, that's right. It was just a spirit, and it's inexplicable. It's something that's mysterious, and it should be treated with reverence and understood as a mystery. Some of the most powerful speakers, they're not that articulate. Paul claimed that he wasn't articulate. I don't know if I believe that. I think they may have been being humble, but maybe he wasn't. But that's not the point. There's a lot of inarticulate speakers that have a power to the way that they speak, because it's not coming from them. It's coming from God. It's coming from the Spirit. It's coming from the heart, because their heart has been changed. And that changes the way that you interact with everyone and with everything. It's tangible. People feel it. People resonate with it. And some people are repulsed by it. But a lot of people, it changes things. It's just, it makes you feel a certain way, and it's undeniable, and it's powerful. So the heart is, again, what is the word that was used there? What was that? Was that responsive? Tender, responsive heart. Isn't that what I just said? Be responsive as a sheep when God leads you back on track. I didn't even mean to do that. Look at it. It's slipping into my unconscious. All right. I think that we're almost done. There's a couple more. And this is the basic law of the temple. So he reveals to Ezekiel the plans for the new temple to be built. And I'll be honest with you, I tuned out. It's like it's repetitive. There's a lot here. I think that there's a lot of symbolic importance to it that I'm not quite ready for. There were a few things that I thought were interesting about the directions that are used, but this one for sure. And this is the basic law of the temple: absolute holiness. The entire top of the mountain where the temple was built is holy. Yes, this is the basic law of the temple. So super fast, because running out of time, we'll do an episode just on this. Just understand the mountain as being a symbol of our journey to God, right? Look at Moses in Exodus speaking with God on the mountain. The people are at the bottom, the world, the rabble, the mundane, the commoners, the peasants, the plebeians. But no, like in all seriousness, like the crowds of thoughts, the crowds of earthly things, those are left behind at the bottom, while the soul, the spirit, ascends to union with God. And there's a journey that you have to go through. It's an upwards journey. It's difficult. And in conjunction with that, there's darkness, right? The mountain was Mount Sinai was on fire and surrounded by curtains of darkness, of thick, dark smoke. So it's difficult, right? There's a lot of illusion. You can get lost if you're not being guided, but you make it to the top, and that is where you commune with God. So there's something very symbolic in the top of the mountain being where the connection between heaven and earth happens. Like not literally, maybe literally, but symbolically, if nothing else. Within us, there is a mountain, and we have to be willing to leave behind the things of the world and to transcend all of that earthly stuff and leave that and journey past it, partially through discipline. We have to be able to tame those things and tell them to stay behind. And we have to get to that point where we can directly encounter the spirit. And so that's a powerful symbol, because that's where the new temple is being built. It's being built on the top of the mountain where it is holy. There's something very powerful in understanding that if you build it at the bottom of the mountain, it's like, well, that's where all the people are. But if you have to climb to the top, that discourages anyone who's not genuinely seeking, because it's difficult. It's hard. You have to work for it. And if you have to work for it, then if somebody's like wants to do it just to attack or is not serious in their faith, they tend to fall out. They tend to turn around like, I don't want to do this. It's not worth it to them, right? Those who are really seeking God are going to make that journey, though, and they're rewarded for it. And people that are even unsure of themselves, like they're still rewarded for it. But there's something to be said, like if you just have everything easy and people can just come in, there's no barrier to entry at all. Like there's a point of diminishing return, obviously, but there's like, you just come to the church and like, oh, you're in, and like, that's fine. You don't have to change anything. You don't have to leave anything behind. Well, how quickly does that get corrupted? Because anyone and everyone can walk in. If you leave your doors open and unlocked in San Francisco, for example, anyone and everyone's in your house in a couple minutes. And is that what you want? No, like you want a certain amount of like purification and cleansing. Like if somebody's going to get through this, they deserve it. To some extent, again, we don't deserve God. We don't deserve salvation. But if we are willing to discipline ourselves and to submit ourselves to correction from divinity, then that changes us, right? And so you see less of worldly things involved in those spiritual undertakings. All right. So the man brought me through the north gateway to the front of the temple. Again, back to cosmic symbolism. Where is the north? Well, that's where the sun never enters. So there's a place of darkness, right? There's a place that's apart from God, but there's also something very interesting in the symbolism of that you, in your darkest struggle, that's where you come to an understanding. That's where you sometimes come to revelation of God. It's you enter into the temple, like look at the temple as like, this is where you worship. This is where you meet with the Lord. And you understand that the darkest times in your life often are where you encounter God. So I thought that was interesting. That's why I underlined that, because it's powerful. Like he didn't just randomly, like God didn't show this vision, randomly pick the directions. He said, this means something. So that's why I'm taking you to the north side, because that's where it's cold. Like it's away from the sun. It's distant. It's shadowy. It's treacherous, I guess. I don't know. But that's a lot of times where, his grace, his power is made perfect in our weakness. That's a lot of times where we give up and we allow God to actually take over. Because when things are going well, a lot of times we don't want to give up. But we have to have an attitude of surrender in order to really receive his grace in fullness. He goes on and says, they must neither shave their heads nor let their hair grow too long. Instead, they must trim it regularly. So I could probably go a lot of ways with this. That seems like an innocuous statement. That seems like something that's like, why is it in the Bible? Why did you underline it? What's wrong with you, Jack? Well, okay, let me explain. I like symbolism. I like thinking like, this has to mean something. He didn't just randomly pick this and say, yeah, we're going to throw this in there. No, like there's a reason for it. And I think that there's a few reasons for it. I think that looking at the balance of like, you're not going to shave your head. So you're not going to go to a place where you're like, well, okay, let me back up a little bit. You're not going to shave your head, but you're not going to let it go too long. So there's an aspect of balance. A lot of monastic practices, and I know that this wasn't like, I don't know if monastic is the right word to describe specifically the Old Testament. You guys can correct me on that if I'm wrong, but there's an element of doing things like that as a sort of a way of setting yourself apart from the world. Like Samson had long hair, he didn't never have a razor taken to his head. That's showing in a way that he's set apart in some sense. But keeping your head and your face shaved, that is also that could also be the same thing. Like I do think that a lot of monks do that. I don't know that was the thing in Hebrew traditions, but that's what stands out to me is the fact that like if you're making a point of doing something to an extreme, that can be unhealthy. We're going to find balance. We're going to find, a way to interact with the world without being influenced by the world. You're going to find a way to live your life without life controlling you. And so you're going to find a way to be devoted to God, but also to do the work that he has put you in this world to do. And so that was what kind of stuck out to me a little bit. There's also they must keep them trimmed regularly. There's also something in that, and like, look, your life, your society fell into complete chaos because you did not take care of it. You did not take care of yourselves. You didn't follow me. You didn't do what you're supposed to do. You didn't watch yourself. You were not accountable for your actions. You were not doing the things that you were supposed to, and everything fell apart, right? Like if you don't take care of your health falls apart. Your body falls apart. You get out of shape. You get weak. You get sick. You get old. I mean, you get old anyway, but you get old faster. You don't take care of yourself. You don't take care of your finances. You don't watch your money. You don't watch each dollar that comes in and out of your account and know what happens to it. It's just like, it's just like it's there sometimes and sometimes it's not. No, if you don't watch it, you're going to be broke. If you don't have good discipline when it comes to setting a budget, you're going to be broke. You have to be able to control your spending. You have to be able to exercise discipline over your body, over your relationships, over everything in life. And it starts again, like, why was the law established the way it was when it was? Because he was building a foundation for the beginning of a society. When you build this foundation, like, look, the law is already there. What are you going to do now? Now that you've fallen into disrepair, now that you've gone downhill, and I had to destroy you, I had to scatter you across the land, now I'm bringing you back. I'm giving you a new temple. You're doing things a certain way. Take care of yourself. Establish personal hygiene. That is a metaphor, as far as I'm concerned, at least one interpretation. There's probably many more, and I'm probably completely wrong about this. But just to point out that if you say, listen, you're going to actually take care of yourself. You're going to take pride in your appearance. You're going to present yourself a certain way. You're not going to just let your beard grow out. You're not just going to let your hair grow out. You're going to trim things. You're going to keep them in order. You're going to establish routines. That was such a big thing in the military. Like, you have discipline with everything. But we were a little bit different. We had to shave every day. We had to shave every day, to get a haircut every week. We had to clean our rooms, our gear, our weapons, everything constantly. Why? Because it builds discipline. It's those little micro habits. It's like, you do this constantly all day. It's like, I don't want to clean this over and over again. I don't want to shave every single day. This is stupid. But you develop 1,000 habits of doing those little things correctly, no matter what. And you don't get away with it. It's like, yeah, it still seems stupid. But at some point you realize, like, wow, like when it comes time to make really big decisions and commitments and like, okay, it's time to get before in the morning again and go run. It's time to go do this thing. Like, hey, we're in a situation where our gear is really getting dirty, we actually do need to clean it every day. It's like, that's already a habit. We're already in it. We're in a situation where it would be so easy to not take care of ourselves because we're in the middle of nowhere. We're in a jungle somewhere rotting to pieces. And it's like, you can get trench foot so fast in the jungle. If you don't take care of yourself, it's like, I'm not going to change my socks every 3 hours. That's stupid. That's so annoying. So I'm not going to shave all the time. Like, you get sick very quickly. So there's a reason for it. And I kind of look at it from that perspective of like, look, you need to take care of yourself. You need to take care of the little things and allow those little things to take care of the big things. Again, I'm probably wrong. Don't listen to me. But if there's wisdom in that, then sure. They will teach my people the difference between what is holy, what is common, what is ceremonially clean and unclean. So at this point, he's saying, like, look, once I bring them back, they're going to, I think he's talking about the priests, they're going to actually go back to the people and teach them to do things the right way. They're not going to deceive them anymore, because the false prophets were a huge problem, because they were affirming people's bad decisions. They were giving prophecies that talked of prosperity. They weren't from God. They were saying, no, keep doing these things that you're doing. Follow your own inclinations. Do what you will. They were doing that kind of stuff. Now he's saying, no. You're not going to do that anymore. You're not going to tell the people what they want to hear. You're going to teach them the difference between right and wrong. You're going to instruct them the way that you're supposed to. You're going to lead them appropriately, as I have called you to do. So guys, that wraps up Ezekiel. If you enjoyed this, be sure to like, subscribe, share with your friends, all that good stuff. Keep listening. I will see you soon. Thank you so much for hanging out with us.